The All Black podcast is powered by our official cloud software partner, SAP, helping our teams in black become the best run teams in sport. To listen to this episode and all the All Black podcasts, subscribe on Apple, Spotify, and anywhere you get your podcasts. This is the All Blacks podcast.
Kia ora whānau, welcome to episode 6 of the All Black podcast powered by SAP. So good today to have one New Zealand's top whistleblowers. He's already done over 100 first-class matches, nearly 50 internationals, amongst that Rugby World Cups, Lions Series. He's even reffed the All Blacks. That's a very small group of people. Welcome to the podcast, Ben O'Keefe.
Kia ora, Randy. Thanks for having me, mate. It's good to be here.
Mate, are you, just on looking at that, are you the only man, the only Kiwi, who's reffed the All Blacks, or has there been a couple more? I can't even think of anyone who would have done it.
Yeah, it's a pretty rare feat to obviously referee your own country. Normally they have neutral referees.
Yeah.
But I think the very first referee was Dave Bishop back. He's from Marlborough, where actually I grew up. He refereed the All Blacks back in maybe the 70s or 80s. I don't want to get that too wrong. With an invitational Barbarian team.
Yep.
And then, he was the first and only for a long, long time. But with COVID and what happened last year when we could get teams into New Zealand for the Bledisloe and the Rugby Championship games, it gave the opportunity for myself and Paul Williams to referee Australia versus the All Blacks in those series. And also they had some Australian referees referee their own country too. And then since then, Brendan Pickrell's done the All Blacks as well. So a very select few, only 4 of us. And who knows what's going to happen in the future, but certainly that period in time, because of COVID, it just, sort of lit up those opportunities to be involved in a live All Black game, which was pretty amazing.
Something you probably never thought you'd do, is it? That's just off the table, really, when you start getting into refereeing. But because of the situation that we're in over the last couple of years, like, hang on a minute, you're out there and you're actually on the pitch with the All Black team getting up close and personal. That's a pretty cool thing to say that you've got on the CV.
Yeah, it was crazy because you're right, 100% right. Like, it was never a goal to be able to referee the All Blacks because you never could. Like, it was just off the table. So for me, the biggest game that I could do potentially would be, South Africa versus England, North versus South, or Australia versus France. So they were the big games at the World Cup or, at the end of the year. So the fact that we could do the All Blacks was incredible. And, I was standing there live in the stadium with the New Zealand anthem and watching the haka. And I realised that I'd never seen the haka my whole life in person, because every time the All Blacks are playing in a July series or overseas, I'm always somewhere else referring, Argentina versus Scotland or, other countries. So I'm always waking up in the morning watching these games. So, it was a different dynamic being able to do that.
Is it a different, as well, like a slightly different feeling in your preparation? Because I know I've heard you say before, like, you referee the matches, and quite often, like you just said, you're abroad, you're doing July test matches in other countries, or you're up north, Northern Hemisphere tours, and you don't have to worry about the thoughts, feelings and emotions of your own people in your own country, who are going to see your performance at an international level up close and personal. You're probably up doing Scotland or something else, far away from our ears and eyes. Was that on your mind as you went into that, sort of doing it in front of like your people, mate, like your community, your mates, your family, all that sort of stuff?
It was certainly an interesting challenge, knowing that, could you referee your own country? And, obviously people say that, how can you referee your own country? You're going to be biased. You're going to be referring, the whistle to your own team. But, the challenge around actually refereeing your own country was great to be able to go through, because I realised that, once they kick the ball off at halfway, you're straight into your process, and the game's so quick that you just referee what's in front of you anyway. So I quite liked that experience, because it proved to me that actually at that top level you could. I think it's easier not to referee your own country, just with perceptions that can happen after games. But it just proved that at the top level, at the elite level, we're out there refereeing what's in front of us, and we can certainly do it. So, yes, I was always a little bit in the back of my mind, thought, could I return home after a game like that? But certainly, you referee overseas and you have the same issue as well. They sort of know where you're staying, and there's a lot of people in other countries that are pretty passionate about their team. So, there's a lot of countries out there that when they see me referee, they're always going to question stuff afterwards as well. So it doesn't change whether you're doing your own country or not.
Absolutely. And so I'll come back to some of the stuff you touched on there, but today we've zoomed you in. Like, what are you up to? Where are you? Like, what part of the country in New Zealand and what's taking you there?
Oh, mate, I'm in the beautiful Bay, or Hawke's Bay, Napier. So
not that Bay, you're just in the Hawke's Bay, not that Bay.
I don't know how to get into that. The Hawke's Bay.
Let's not get into that, yeah.
I thought I'd just put that out there just to see if you're fishing. And yeah, so I'm here for the Bunnings NPC, which is fantastic because, I was actually based in Auckland last year. I've moved back to Wellington where I've sort of spent the last 6 years, but in Auckland, in lockdown. So this time of the year, I was basically stuck at home.
Yeah.
Couldn't really do anything. I was just watching it on TV. So it's been a while since I've been able to get into, I guess, the regional rugby within New Zealand. And this half of the year and this competition, I absolutely love because you're getting around the regions. You're refereeing teams that you haven't refereed in a while. You're seeing players from different Super Rugby teams all amalgamated into the club team as well, and you get some really, really awesome games. And I think the beauty about this year is we've got one massive competition where everyone's actually playing for that final spot, that final trophy, and we haven't had that for a while. So that's exciting. It's cool, and I'm going. You're going around places where you haven't been in a while, and even meeting local referees that you haven't seen in a while too, and working with them. So the games are always exciting, and I feel like last weekend I was in Blenheim, where I grew up in my hometown, and I refereed at Lansdowne Park, which I grew up playing on that park. But for some reason, I've never been selected. It was the only field in New Zealand that I never refereed at. So last weekend was pretty special at Lansdowne Park, being able to blow the whistle there. It nearly got cancelled because Southland couldn't arrive.
Yes, the fog.
Yeah. Yeah, I just thought, okay, here we go again. I'm still not going to referee on this park. So I was able to tick that box. And here in Napier, it's a beautiful day. It's a Rainfully Shield game tonight. So, that's massive as well. It's just going to be exciting. It's a really cool time of the year.
It's awesome, mate. It's a good brand, isn't it? The weather's starting to get a little bit better, and it's probably a slightly younger demographic of guys playing footy, and they just love to chuck the ball around. And there's a few less cameras for Sky on these ones, isn't there, as well, Ben? Like to keep an eye on you as well.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. As referees, you do take notice of where the cameras are, and I've noticed that there are not a lot of in-goal cameras at the moment. So that's actually a bad thing for us because it means that as a referee, I've got to work my butt off to get in goal to be able to make those decisions versus just sending it upstairs and letting the man in the TMO box do it for me. So a little bit extra pressure on me now.
Actually, a great initiative coming up, and it's one around. We're doing a luncheon in September for all our referees. It's a capping ceremony, which is pretty cool. First time it's happened. And firstly, for you, when you heard about it, what was your thoughts around being capped as one of our New Zealand referees?
Oh, it's incredibly special hearing that we're going to be recognised, not just the current referees, but the previous referees who've led the way for us, who've created that pathway for international referees, New Zealand referees to be refereeing, the biggest games in the world overseas. But it just feels like we're becoming part of that, that New Zealand team environment. The All Blacks, the Black Ferns, everyone's been capped, and it's just something that they're recognising that we're in that same environment of doing those games. Yes, we're not doing the All Blacks, we're overseas, and at 3 a.m, so potentially we're not being seen by New Zealanders as much. But it's just so special for me to know that I'm going to be sitting in a room, I'm going to receive a cap, but also to be in a room with some of our first ever professional referees, Colin Hawke, Pat O'Brien. Even Dave Bishop, I mentioned before, he's going to be there, and referees through that era, who have all shared experiences like I have, will just be really, really special because refereeing, it's quite hard to explain what we do week in, week out when we're overseas, what it's like in games. But I'll be in a room with other men and women who have experienced it, and I can share those stories with. So I'm really excited by that. I think it's as I said, a really good initiative because it's just going to recognise the sacrifices and the achievements of New Zealand referees that have been and gone.
Oh, absolutely, because at times it can be a thankless task. I know you guys love it because you feel like you've got the best seat in the house and it's a great way to be involved in the community, but that's exactly what it's recognising is your contribution to the rugby community, which is fantastic. And I know that we're going to do some more specific podcasts around this closer to the luncheon, but one thing New Zealand Rugby are really keen is to try and get a representative of every single referee that's blown the whistle over the years. Some of those have passed away, but still would love a family representative. So if you do, there's a list of New Zealand Rugby referees on the New Zealand Rugby website, and if anyone's related or close to someone who's been involved in that fraternity, please jump in there and help us locate as many of them as possible so we can make that a really special event coming up in September. Mate, we want to, firstly, a few quick fire questions, get to know Benny a little bit better, the man behind the whistle, but what was your favourite player or All Black growing up?
So this was interesting. I don't know if anyone would have said this before, but my favourite player growing up was Rhys Duggan, Waikato.
How good.
And I don't know, my dad was a massive Waikato fan, always wore the jersey. And for some reason, I don't know. I also grew up. I loved a bit of the underdog. So Rex Duggan was in the era of the Byron Kelleher, the Justin Marshalls. So whenever Waikato played Otago or Waikato played Canterbury, we were always going. Obviously, Dad was always going for Waikato, and I was always going for Reese to try and get one up. Those guys, and I had to actually Google and search, and I do remember I think he did get a test for the All Blacks, so it does count as international. But yeah, I just back in the day I thought he was pretty awesome. It never made me want to be a halfback because I was never any good at sort of throwing the ball around. But yeah, he was definitely a player I always kept my eye on.
He was scrappy, wasn't he? He was a feisty competitor, and yeah, geez, he was part of a couple of pretty decent Waikato sides back in the day. How good. And for you, mate, you probably do a bit of travel, you got a little bit of downtime every now and again, even though I know the referees work very hard, Ben. But what are you streaming at the moment, mate? What's on the Netflix or the Apple or whatever your go-to device is?
Well, mate, we work so hard and we travel so much that
No time. No time.
I've run out of Netflix shows.
You've clocked it.
But no, mate, I recently just clocked whatever season it was, season 4 of Ozark. That was always a staple of mine, which was really cool. So as soon as I found out that came out, I sort of got straight into that. And next minute it's 4 a.m. You watch the whole season. But like controversially, like I've sort of made it a bit of a series. As a month ago, Top Gun 2 came out, and mate, I grew up with a VHS cassette of that movie. Grew up with that, so when that came out, I've probably watched that about 8 or 9 times since then. So it's become a bit of a season or a series for me.
You're preaching that's converted here. Like, it's tough to get a sequel right, but they nailed it. They did set nailed it. I won't have anything else. It was a great show, wasn't it?
Yeah.
What about, mate, on the way to footy, about to get along and ref one of the games? What's on the Spotify playlist? What's your go-to? Are we calming down? Are we revving up? Like, how do we approach this?
Yeah, no, look, I'm a massive fan of a bit of music before the game in the sheds, before the match as well. I've always got my speaker going. I've got a pretty eclectic taste in music. I love a good beat, but I'm definitely more of an acoustic man, bit of rock. So anything like Oasis, the Chili's, In Excess, love Fleetwood Mac. So I put all those tunes on, and I'll probably annoy the commentators because about half an hour before kickoff, we put on the communication devices, we put the Sky microphone on, and so that's all open mic. Right. So I'm blasting away with these tunes, and I'm pretty sure they probably have to turn me down, depending obviously on what music I have. But I love a good beat, and I think it definitely helps me get in the zone before a game, just to relax and get some tunes going. And I love like at downtime in big test matches, when maybe a prop's injured or they're just taking a water break or something. When the stadium puts their music on, like one song I remember that I love is a real stadium anthem. Is Can't Stop by the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Oh, yeah.
And when I start that tune, I'm bouncing, and I've got to make sure I'm not going to blow a quick penalty straight after that because I'm loving it.
Mate, yeah, like, God, we'll get to that a little bit later, but some of the atmospheres at some of the test matches you've been to must be really hard to keep your head in the game, but that's a good set list, mate. And if we're having 3 people around for dinner, who is it? Who are you inviting around? Can be anyone, and can you cook? Like, what's on the menu?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. Like, I think you'd appreciate this, Roundy. Like, I'm a big golf man. I love my golf and hitting a ball around. But I'd probably invite Cam Smith for first and foremost.
Yeah, just to find out if he's going to live golf or not, or
Yep. And I wonder if he is. I reckon potentially there could be a move there because he's been pretty successful lately.
Yeah.
So get him over. I reckon he'd be pretty good helping me out with the fire and just getting that mullet there. And also just because of the banter that there was between Bryson DeChambeau and Brooks Koepka.
Yeah.
I reckon me and Cam Smith will be able to sit back and sort of just watch that meltdown. So that'd be a pretty good night around the fire. And that's what I do. Like I think my cooking, I can follow a recipe, but I'm really bad at actually working out what I want to cook that night. Like walking into the supermarket and trying to pick things out. So I've got a big outdoor fire at home that you can cook on. So for me, I've got my trusty, which could be controversial, little thermometer. Chuck the meat on the fire and just cook some steaks. I bought a little rotisserie the other day, put a little pork roll on there, and will just be a big protein diet for the night, which I think will be good fun.
Sounds like a good night. I think we're seeing a trend here, producer Carl. I think we've got a details man. But firstly, mate, into your career, like, what got you into reffing? I know you won't say this stuff, but you're a head boy at Marlborough Boys. You're a man child. You're in the midfield there. Played a lot of footy. Played a bit for the first 15. Down to Dunnes. Doing medicine. So a heap on, and sort of what steered you towards refereeing amongst all of that? Because there's a lot going on as a young fella.
Yeah, it was. And like, I had an exciting time growing up. Rugby was a big part of my life and my family's life. Where I grew up in Marlborough, my dad actually refereed. So he was sort of, as a referee, a lot of referees start by playing and then they get injured, or they get a little bit older and then they move into refereeing. That's sort of the pathway that my dad followed. And I watched him growing up. I'd play rugby in the morning, then I'd be watching him. I'd be the ball boy, or sometimes I'd hold the flag for him on the sideline in the afternoon. But I never thought that I'd ever want to referee. It never, I guess I still wanted to be an All Black back then. That's the dream of every kid. And so I did. I went to university, and my second year, after my first year there, I went down and trialled for a rugby team down there. And I lost a little bit of love. I lost a bit of passion. And I wasn't a great player either. So that always helped the decision to move on. And he actually got into my ear and said, because back then, this must have been around 2007, 2008. We started having, Super Rugby was professional. We started having pathways there for referees to become professional and start traveling the world. So there was a little bit of a job there. Again, I didn't really ever recognize that, but I think, Dad obviously had some insight. And he said, look, you should try. If you don't want to play anymore, you should just stay in rugby and stay refereeing. So I went down to a Monday meeting down in Dunedin, just by the University Oval there. And then that weekend, I was on my laptop, and then you didn't have iPhones. It was still sort of the Nokias. So you could, the email that they sent to me didn't go to my phone. They sent an email to me on the Wednesday saying that I had a game on the Saturday, which I didn't receive until 10 minutes before kickoff. So I quickly looked up, and actually I was flatting across from North Ground, and I was busy studying and on my laptop, and I was looking over at the field, and there's the team warming up, and there was no referee, and I was like, oh, that's a bit funny, but anyway, I'll get back to my work. And I checked my email, and yeah, I was actually the one that was meant to be refereeing that game. So we jumped out, got my boots, ran over, had a whistle. I asked the coach for a watch because I didn't have a watch, and then mate proceeded to referee this game. Like, I'd never want to see the video of that game ever again, because I'm sure I was all over the place. But yeah, that's how it started. And it was just something that, for me, it kept me involved in the game, but also got me outside, from the studies and all the clinic work and working in the hospital on the wards. Kept me fit, so kept me mentally sort of agile for the work I was doing during the week, and we could have a little bit of banter after the game with the players. So that's what I loved about it, and the progression just happened after a few years while being down there doing that. So for me, it was just a passion to stay involved in the game that I love.
Was it a big decision to sort of, when the opportunity came to go full time, because you're doing, obviously you'd studied medicine, you put a huge amount of work into that, you were starting to work in that sector, and when the opportunity came, was that a tough decision, because they're two big opportunities and quite significantly different?
Yeah, it was a massive decision. And looking back now of what I've done and achieved, I'm really grateful that I did make that decision. But at that time, I was nervous around, was I doing the right thing? I've just, because we're sort of winding forward now. 6 years of study, 2 years of postgraduate work as a doctor, 1 year is sort of within ophthalmology, which is eye medicine, which I'm getting into or working in still. And, in that rat race or that cycle that you work in as a medicine, everyone's racing to be a consultant by the time that they're to do that. You have to put your heart and soul, during hours during the day, after hours, weekends. And sometimes if you're not seen to be doing that, you're not going to get selected to go on to be selected for those training programs. So I was really nervous, and it got to a point where, I was working Monday to Friday, in the hospital, working in the clinics, doing on calls. Friday night, I was flying to a game, doing the game Saturday, flying back Sunday, and straight back to work on the Monday. And that was okay at the start, because I was, this last 6 months of the year when it was NPC, you could sort of manage that because it might only be 6 weekends of the year. But then I started getting selected for Super Rugby. As a player, the better that you're doing, you get selected for higher honours. So I moved into that Super Rugby realm. So I started being the assistant referee. They always get you to be the assistant referee before you're in the middle. So then that meant at the start of the year, started filling up on the weekend as well. And then I started doing 1 or 2 games as the referee in the middle. So I was traveling not just around New Zealand for games and having to prepare that week for games. I was also going to Australia and back. So my week got pretty full on. I never really got I was almost doing 2 full-time jobs. And I specifically remember there was one Friday clinic that I was doing. And normally, your clinics timed from 8 a.m. in the morning to 5 p.m. in the evening. but whatever adds on or comes in that day, you just have to add on to the end of the clinic. So I had a flight and I was doing a game in Auckland on that Saturday. I had a flight at 9 o'clock that night because I knew I had to try to obviously do it well after clinic. I thought I had heaps of time. By 6 p.m., by 7 p.m., we still had about 10 or 15 people waiting in the waiting room. I thought, this is going to be a long one. And I couldn't just hand it over to the other doctors that were on call because you've got to, be there and you've got to help out. You've got to assist. So the whole time I was looking at the time, am I going to make it? Am I not going to make it? I started stressing out a little bit. But long story, I ended up, missing that flight. I had to, race to the airport, book another flight myself, and then refereed the game the next day. And I refereed it well. But that whole situation of where I'm in a clinic trying to, give the best attention that I can to the patients who need me, because I need to make a really good diagnosis and then a management plan. I'm busy looking at the clock the whole time. And then that pressure or that stress of rushing to the airport, potentially missing my flight, could really impact my preparation for the game the next day. So I got to a point where I thought, look, this is going to be pretty difficult to continue, especially as I get more games. But fortunately, at that time, New Zealand Rugby decided to offer me a full-time contract. And I mulled on it for about 2 weeks. I took me 2 weeks to sit down with my head of department because I was pretty nervous about talking to her around leaving medicine potentially for 1 year, because that's what it was at the start, just 1 year. I didn't know what was going to happen afterwards. But to her credit, she really helped me out. She said, look, you should give it a go. Medicine's always going to be there. I'd really, really support that. So that the fact that I was able to open up to my head of department and I was well supported, it really helped the decision, and it meant that I could go away, do referring, and also work as a locum when I'm back in New Zealand and in Wellington. So it was hard. It was a really tough decision, but it just, timing-wise, it worked out perfectly. And looking back now, I'm still being able to do both. So I'm still able to work in the hospital. It's worked out really well.
Mate, so good, but I can imagine that being such a tough decision. You've cracked it these days. You're one of our full-time professional refs, which is awesome, and you've done, not just domestic games, but international games. Like, what does for a professional ref, what does that week look like, or what does that preparation going into big games, whether it be Super, whether it be international, look like? Because, sometimes perhaps there's a perception from, the rugby public and rugby followers that, Ben gets in 4 or 5 games of golf and watches a bit of Ozark and then he rocks up and refs the game. But in talking to you at other times and other referees, there's a heap to it, eh? There's an absolute heap to it.
Yeah, it's not your average 9 to 5 job. It's very, very different. And it took me a while to actually get into a routine of what worked for me. You got to find out what works for Ben O'Keefe during the week so that he can go out on a Saturday and referee whatever game he's doing really well. And so my preparation, what my week looks like, is the same whether I'm refereeing NPC this weekend, Super Rugby or a Test match, or even at a World Cup. And a lot of it is around, for me, it's around confidence. So how do I get confidence that I can go out there and referee the game to the best that I can? And so the way, when I'm confident, it's because I prepared really well. So the preparation during the week is, we have training. So we have a training that gives us all the physical field work that we need to do, and also the strength training that we need to do. And for the majority of us, I mean, I can't speak for most referees, but most of the strength training is just for injury prevention.
Yeah.
So it's not as much on the biceps and the guns that I think some referees that you probably see on the international stage have. So and a lot of the trainings around it, interval-based training to be able to keep up with the game, but also the mental training around, we can't be fatigued because we still have to make decisions when we're running 8 to 9 kilometers a game.
Yeah.
And those decisions have to be accurate after you've done that 8 or 9 kilometers and you're in the last minute of that game as well. So, we do a lot of that during the week. So that's the sort of the physical side. Then there's the mental side around how do you prepare and review a game. So let's say I referee a game on the Saturday. On the Sunday, generally, we'll be traveling home. And even if this is for internationals. So either on the flight home or on the next Monday, we're going to do a full review of that game. So we look at all the detail of that game. So we have all the angles, we can download all of that. We can have the communication from myself and also the assistant referees. And I'll go through the whole game and I'll compare it to actually what my preparation plan was for that match. So what are the key focus areas that I expected to get for this game to flow really well? And it might be speed of the game, making sure that we have momentum. It might be making sure that we have space so that players can counter-attack and that we don't have any players offside, and also setup of line-out and scrum. Let's say they are those 3 things. I'd review my game based on those 3 things, and I'd also look at every single decision that I made, whether it was clear and obvious or if it was right or wrong,
Yeah.
And also every non-decision, so decisions that I didn't make that I should have. So a side entry at the ruck, which I've missed. And all those details will fall out of the review that I'll do, and I'll work out, okay, what was my percentage? How accurate was I? Why did I get these decisions wrong? Was it because I had a poor read on what was happening in front of me, or was it a misunderstanding of the technical side, or was it positionally I was actually out of position? That's why. So all these things will fall out of it, and I'll have a chat with my coach. We all have coaches, and hopefully because they would have done a review as well. Hopefully our reviews align so that when we discuss, okay, how do we improve for next week? There'll be 2 or 3 key things I'll then take into the next week around preparing for my next game. So then from that Monday leading into that game, all I'll be doing is I'll be probably watching the teams from the week before just to work out, okay, is there anything that catches me by surprise, or is there anything that they're doing illegally that I might need to get in touch with them this week early so they can train to be better? And what can I do to lead into this game to actually get my mental preparation right around jackal pictures, tackle pictures, the scrum. So the autonomy is great. I can work out, I can do it at a time that suits me. But by the time that you've done your review, by the time that you've done your preview and all your training, all of a sudden you're on a flight again on Thursday. Yeah. So it does go pretty quickly in terms of all that work.
What sort of, particularly for big test matches or big super games, what sort of interaction do you have with the coaching team? Because I suspect, you always hear coaches talking about they want to have clarity and be on the same page as the officials, but also, no doubt, we're all competitive humans, and they're trying to find those little advantages as well, those little places where they can push and prod and try and develop their game around, what they think the referee might do. Like, do you have much interaction with the coaches? Because I know behind a head coach, there's always an army of analysts and assistant coaches and all sorts of stuff who are doing all the sort of reviewing and all the clipping and all the things that you're doing as well to try and best set up their team for the big game as well.
Yeah, and the one of the best things that's happened, especially with the New Zealand rugby over the last 2 years, especially this year, was that each Super Rugby team had a professional referee based with them. So I was based with the Hurricanes. So I mean, I could never referee or AR be a team over Hurricane game, but we were in that environment for the whole season and able to assist them with law knowledge, post-game review, and just providing them clarity around what they could or couldn't do. So that for me was amazing. So there's this relationship being created between there's 4 main stakeholders in a game of rugby, like including spectators, but the coaches, the players, and the referees. We're always off to the side a little bit, and we could be in our own bubble, determining, okay, what's the right law around here. We weren't having that interaction with players or coaches to be able to understand better what we should be refereeing. So now we've got that collaboration, which worked really well. So leading into games, let's say it was a team that I wasn't involved with, what would happen is that early in the week, we're always encouraged, especially post-game, we send in our review to the coaches. So the decisions that we got right, the decisions that we got wrong, and maybe the clarity around some real technical decisions. And normally coaches are really appreciative of that. They can take that on board so that when they're doing a review on Monday and they go, what's that penalty for? Or why was that player yellow carded? They immediately have that answer from us. So they can either tell that the prop that was hinging at the scrum, look, this is the picture that you're showing, that we need to work on this week. Or actually, no, the referee's actually just said that, you should have been rewarded for that jackal. So your position over the ball is really good. So there's immediate clarity for players, which I think's, by having that interaction is really good. And then, leading into a game, whether it's an international test match. So for example, when I was in Argentina in July, both Gregor Townsend and Michael Cheika, they wanted to have meetings with us. So they'd have a meeting with us on the Thursday. There's a bit of a protocol around, 48 hours before kickoff. That's probably the latest that they can contact us. And what they've moved away from, I think, is actually trying to show too many clips of the opposition, because that never works. Coaches often, and it started at club rugby, they'd always show clips around, this is what the other team's trying to do. Like, I reckon this is illegal, just for your awareness, Ben. And I was just like, yeah, thanks, mate, because I'm going to go in and referee my own style, and I can only be consistent with the way that I referee. So just the fact that a clip's been dropped on me the day before, isn't really going to change, obviously, how I referee. But so what they've moved to is actually trying to show clips of things that they're doing, so that we're not surprised if it's a move at the back of the line out that they're doing. So they might identify that we stand at the back of the line out. So potentially I might then move to the front of the line out to assist with something that they want to do, so I'm not in the way. Or they may have some real technical line out to maul move, or something they're doing midfield that they want to just know. we've been training this all week. Is this okay? And then I can say, yes, it is okay, or actually, no, if I saw this on the field, you're going to be penalised. So that whole collaboration and the communication that we have during the week is becoming really, really structured and really, really good. Obviously, we saw examples where it actually went wrong, with Lions series last year and all the media that came out after that. So one thing that I think World Rugby is doing right now, which is going to filter all the way down through Super Rugby and NBC, is setting up this is what you can expect if you want to talk to the referee during the week, and this is the time you need to do it in. So I think it's a real positive.
You touched on a little bit, like some of those games, they're where you want to be as a ref. You want to be doing Lions series, you want to be doing World Cups. You're privileged to be able to have done an All Black game, but like that comes with huge pressure, huge criticism. At the real high end of it, Rusty got on and did a 50 or 60-minute video around why he thought the referee got things wrong. How do you handle that stuff, mate? Because I know I've talked to you in the past, and you'll get people who go out of their way to find your name on social, and even though it's got 2 E's and 2 F's, they still manage to track you down, and they're happy to write some comments or stick you a DM or something around what they think you've done wrong. That's actually takes a lot of effort to do that. And I'm sure, certain people can take criticism. They're like, how do you process that sort of stuff? Because it's, people love their footy, and sometimes they want to let you know what they think you've done right or wrong.
Yeah, honestly, like my last name, you're right. You nailed it. 2 E's, 2 F's, and they can still find me. And the apostrophe can still send me, their thoughts post game. So that was the biggest change from the level going from NBC to Super Rugby and from Super Rugby to international. Yes, the game's a little bit quicker, but I've always said, like refereeing at the top level, it's a lot quicker, but the players are so accurate. So if there's an error, it really sticks out. So I find often those games, they're never easy to referee, but often those pictures are a lot easier to see that's in front of you versus maybe you go out and do an under 15 game and everyone's just running around the ball. So they're quite tough to referee sometimes. But so the biggest change actually when you're going up those levels is the attention or the opinions and the feedback that you get post game. And mate, I love rugby. I love opinions. I love how people get invested in the game, and they always have their thoughts, and they want their team to beat the opposition. But over the last probably 5-6 years, with social media and the access that people have to people now, you can just put a thought out there, and it's actually really hard sometimes to avoid it. Where back in the day when one of our mates, Jacko, was probably referring, he could decide not to pick up the newspaper, and he wouldn't read about it. Where now your phone's beeping, you've got a private message, and it's someone talking to you about how they thought you were pretty poor last night, and then they can get even deeper into some pretty hurtful stuff. So it's tough because we're all humans. Like, I'm a human being. I don't like being told negative things. And I also accept that there's a lot of decisions in games that I make which are errors or could be better. The game is it's not black and white. We're not asked to referee black and white, because if we were, then that 60-page law book would mean that we're penalising everything every 20 seconds. So there is that balance that we're trying to create. So there is a big difference between, I think, passion for the game and like cheering and maybe getting involved in the game and maybe yelling something out, versus actually the depth that some people go to post game to give you the criticism. So it is hard to deal with. I think just over time I've become more accustomed to realizing that actually it's okay. It's okay that I can referee a really, really good game and I'm still going to get messages afterwards. I remember watching a test match that I think Craig Gibier refereed, and I got to a point where in my career as a referee that I could understand, okay, what is the level of accuracy at a test match? I think I might have done a handful. And I watched this test match that Jubes did, and he absolutely nailed it. Like he was one of the top referees when he refereed. And I watched this game and I thought he was just excellent. And I still read things afterwards that criticised, decisions in the game, the decisions that were correct. So that was a bit of a moment where I realised that even when we're right, we're still going to be getting criticism, whether that's right or wrong from those people. So it helped me sort of process that. Okay, these are just opinions from people that really have no understanding of the game. And I just push it aside. And there are times now where I'm on the back of the bus. We might have finished a test match, and I'm with Angus Gardner from Australia, and he's showing me messages that he's being sent. So there's that collaboration, that teamwork, and we can laugh at it a little bit now. It's never easy, but you can laugh at it. But it's one of those things that it's a real blight on the game because it definitely steps over the line sometimes. But yeah, I just have to understand that it's never going to change really. And the more games you do, yes, the more pressure you get. Test matches there's a lot of pressure. Line series, World Cup in the game, and decisions afterwards. So I'm going to be in a situation in the future where it happens again, and that's just something I've accepted. And it's a little bit easier, but yeah, never straightforward.
No matter what happens in the future with rules or processes or systems or the things that we do, rugby, in our opinion of it, is subjective, isn't it? Humans see the same thing and have different opinions, and that's just the reality of and it, like you say, it's what drives passion and opinion and conversation, and it's great. But I suppose as long as we always, try and keep it, at the right level and not. Then that's the way forward. I wanted to try and switch to the positive a little bit around. You've actually done now, even though it's still probably early days in your career in some regards, you've hopefully got many, many games in front of you. What's been the highlight so far? What's been the good stuff? Is it things you look back on when you first sort of got a first professional game, or is it some of these really big, iconic things you've been a part of? I just, looking from a distance, things like the Lion series, they just look amazing. I've never been over and seen that, but the South African rugby public are just great supporters. The Lions couldn't as much, but they travel so much, and get around their Lions team. They only go to New Zealand or to South Africa once every 12 years or 8 years. They're pretty amazing things to be a part of. What's stuck out for you as the biggest highlights thus far?
It's a really difficult one, Randy, because this game that we're involved in is just incredible, and the opportunities that you get as a referee, and I'm sure the same things for players, especially at international level, are just amazing. So every year it's like, oh, that's my biggest highlight, and then the next year there'll be something different. It's not necessarily because it's an international game. It's like, a few weeks ago I refereed in Shannon. I did, Waikanae Beach versus Shannon in the club rugby game. That was a highlight because afterwards we had a great aftermatch with devil sausages. We were able to relax.
Yeah.
So that was a highlight after doing the professional game for 4 years and not being able to do that. But I think, you touched on about the Lions series, and that's certainly a pinnacle. There are a few pinnacles as referees that you want to be able to achieve. Because I love to challenge myself. I always want to be better every single week, and I always want to see progression because I want the game. I want people that when Ben O'Keefe referees a game, they can sit back and go, yeah, I didn't really notice Ben O'Keefe because I really enjoyed that game. The players had space to play. It was a really good contest. We got some great tries, and the right team won. And that's my goal. And you've always got to be better. You've always got to be improving to try and get that. And that's one of my goals.
Do you let yourself take in the occasion? Like, I look at those things, whether it's a World Cup or Lions or just a test match, there's thousands of people in the crowd. Like you say, there's the tunes going on. There's, you're refereeing some of the best athletes in the game. Do you let yourself take it in, or do you actually have to just get in the zone so that you're in the best possible place to be to make good decisions? Because obviously, you're good at what you do, mate, but by Christ, I would get distracted. I just look at it and loving footy as well. There's some great footy players in front of you. There's things in the stands, there's tunes, there's all sorts of stuff going on. Or actually, it's that comes post-match, and when the whistle blows, it's very much game on.
Yeah, a little bit of both. Like, I try and be myself in the game. I think that's one of the early learnings I made, is that if you're not trying to be yourself, then it's pretty unnatural and you can't make good decisions. And so, like, before a game, I'm pretty relaxed, but I'm serious. I'm nervous as well because I want to do a really good job. But what I'll do, and some of the best parts where I take it all in, are the anthems. So as you walk out onto the field, fireworks are going, there's smoke, you go out, you stand in front, you got two countries next to you, South Africa, there might be Scotland on the other side, you're at Murrayfield, it's pretty foggy, they are pretty special moments. And so those moments, I'll always be looking around, I'll be checking out how many people are in the stands. And the anthems, when they go, especially, like, I love the Scottish national anthem, especially when, like, a Six Nations game, like you talk about experience, is one of the most special tournaments to be involved in, just in terms of probably the crowds that they get, because they're literally 50-50 because of travelling supporters.
Yeah.
And you're at Murrayfield and the Scottish anthem is going on. They've got the piper on the roof. It stops halfway, and then the rest of the half of the song, the crowd's just singing it. And then you go off and you're doing a Six Nations game. And so when you actually blow the whistle, you don't and you're in the 80 minutes, you're so focused on the tackle that's in front of you or the high ball that's happening, compared to the assistant referees, who I think are a little bit closer to the sideline, you actually don't hear the crowd. It's only once when I was at Twickenham, and I remember Johnny May, with 5 minutes to go, he was sort of boosting down the sideline, and that's when the roar actually got so loud that it broke me out of my refereeing sort of focus, and I was like, wow, this is awesome, and I was able to appreciate that because it was a runaway try, but then next kickoff you're back into it, and then so afterwards, so beforehand you take it all in. And then afterwards, especially when it goes well, it's always a really nice feeling, and you can sort of. I often the reflection for me is the most satisfying when I can sit back in the changing room afterwards and go, yeah, that was a really good game, and we contributed really well to it. And so to get back to your initial question, Lions series was amazing. I think World Cup, I think was special too. As a highlight, as a pinnacle for me. And for the same reasons I was sort of described at the World Cup, I refereed Japan versus Scotland, so host nation in Japan. It was the last game of the World Cup, and actually it was almost like a playoff because the winner of that game went into the quarterfinals. Cool. Japan played so well, Scotland played so well to reach that point that it wasn't decided yet. And so I think there was about 70,000 people at Yokohama Stadium. There was a few million people watching it. And that was a game when I walked off, I was able to reflect and go and be really satisfied with my performance and felt like I really was able to contribute to that game. So for me, that was a pretty big highlight. But then, amongst other things like referring the All Blacks and Lions we've talked about, it's pretty hard just to pick one.
Is there certain players, whether it be their knowledge of the rules and how they challenge you on the field, like how they manage the ref? It's so often we hear something talked about, captains and players, how they manage the ref, or even just players, like just guys that you watch. And I know you're in the zone and you're focused, but you just go, wow, that guy's fast or that guy's powerful. You sit there and go, do you have those moments as well? And if you do, who are those players that challenge you, or who are those players where you just go, amongst some brilliant athletes here, even these guys are actually showing out a little bit amongst this crew? Is there any names that spring to mind?
Yeah, the whole captain relationship or leader relationship with the referee is really interesting. So I've been able to come across some big personalities, some big players, especially at the national level. So I think of players like Sia Khaleesi, Alan Wynne-Jones, Guillaume Guerrero, who was in for France, and even Michael Hooper. These are the best players in their position in the world, in their country, and who are captains. And they've all got different styles of how they deal with the referee. And it's really impressive how they do that, because a lot of times once they're at that level, we're really lucky. Rugby is a sport where the players do respect the officials, and I think it's really important that we continue that through the game. So when you have that relationship with that captain, it's really good how you see different dynamics that come out. So like an Alan Jones, who's 2 meters plus, will always come up to the referee and actually put his hands on his knees, get to that level and be side by side, so it's not intimidating, and just ask questions. Michael Hooper will do it on the run at the next line out. He'll be asking questions. And, I just think, even like Rory Best, he was just such a gentleman. So it's hard not to like him. So they do, in their own ways, get you in their pocket, but they also understand, well, I can't. And this is why I tell captains as well. If, so I was working with the captains with the Hurricanes this year. It's like you can never change the decision that a referee's made at that point, but potentially you can plant seeds for later in the game. And it may be the difference between whether that penalty has been given for a jackal or that penalty has been given for not rolling. So that whole dynamic is really, really good, and those definitely personalities are the ones that I really respect. In terms of players, I think it's like you're refereeing a test match, and the hits and the tackles you feel, like you actually feel the air move around you because you're a meter away from it. The pace that guys can run through gaps, and then break a tackle and then do an offload is pretty incredible as well. I think I saw. Even in the NBC last weekend, I saw Nick Grigg do, he's this new centre for Waikato from Scotland. He stepped and did a pass behind his back, and so you see that kind of the skill level, I think, which is really impressive for me, because the players, like the strength, the speed, they're all pretty even, but now the game's just going to a new level with offloads and the way that people can kick and catch and compete for the high ball. So yeah, it's all pretty impressive. What
would we always hear about, the Bronco, the players do at the start of the year, the fitness test. Bodie's got one that's just over 4 minutes or something like that. If we're off to the the Olympics of referees, who's running the best Bronco? You know, is it a Kiwi? Is it, you know, one of these past players like Nick Berry, who still looks like he enjoys the gym? Like, what? Who's doing well here, mate? Who's winning the fitness test?
I'm glad you brought up Bez, because he's a great man, and he does love the gym, and he sets some pretty good standards there. But like I think, and this will be an interesting one at this capping ceremony, just to talk about with the old referees. You know, what was their physical routine back in the day? And I reckon we'll probably put a few more times in the gym during the week than them, but I don't know. We'll find out. We actually had a World Rugby meeting in Dubai in July. So before every window, so we have a Six Nations window, a July window, a Rugby Championship window, and a November window. And we all get together to meet before those windows to talk about the laws, to talk about the focus areas for that window. And during that, we do fitness tests as well. So part of the fitness test that we had to do in Dubai was obviously skin folds, which is never a nice one to do, especially as you get a bit older like I am. You'd have to do a 10-meter speed test. You have to do a vertical counter movement jump, and then a Bronco. So the 20, 40, 60 meters back and forth 5 times. And it's never been a favourite of anyone's.
It just doesn't sound that hard, but it's just a killer, isn't it?
It doesn't sound hard until you're 3 laps in and you're behind everyone else. But
totally.
The referees, you know, as I sort of touched on before, you know, we do have to get to a level where we're more like middle distance runners. So we've got to be fit. We've got to be able to keep up with the game. Obviously, don't need to keep on side, so our running lines can be a little bit adjusted. And we've got to be mentally be able to make decisions at the end. So our standard is that international referees, we've got to get under 4:55. Okay, and that's pretty rare.
Yeah, that's good going.
And the quickest referee that did a Bronco in July was actually Christoph Ridley from England. He's a young up and coming referee. I think he's an assistant referee in the Rugby Championship at the moment. So, you know, hopefully we'll go to the World Cup in some capacity. And he did it in about 4:16.
Wow.
Which is super. Now the problem is that when you start getting those times, his standard now goes that he must get 14 next time and 4 or 5. So the smarter referees like me sort of hold back a little bit, so that there's always a little bit to give. But we're fortunate in New Zealand. I think we've probably got, you know, we've got 4 full-time professional referees within New Zealand. So Brendan Pickerel, Paul Williams, James Dunne, and we have Mike Fraser as well. So 5. And I can honestly say I think we're the fittest group of referees in the world at the moment. And I think we're sort of, you know, doing a really good space with the setup that we have in New Zealand, refereeing Super Rugby, and the group that we have. You know, hopefully we're going to, you know, lead the way over the next few years, because we're still, you know, the majority of us are still pretty young. And you see that it happens in cycles over decades. You get, you know, top referees will all come from Australia. Then the next group will all be from England for the next 5 years. And, you know, when Jews were refereeing, the top groups were from South Africa. So hopefully I think that, you know, we're in a really good space for the New Zealand referees, and that's only going to benefit Super Rugby and, you know, hopefully benefit the All Blacks, because if you've got us working at a high standard, then, you know, it should be able to transition into what you see in the game when we're watching it down here.
Absolutely. I think you forgot to mention your Bronco time. I didn't hear it. What was it?
Mate, I was actually a 4:28, so sub 4:30.
So that's rapid.
It was a PB.
That's really good.
I pulled out all the stops, so I'll be nervous doing it right now though. I haven't done as much training before then as I did.
Mate, what's next? Because I know, you know, you're doing some Bunnings NPC at the moment, which is awesome. We've got some internationals coming up, but obviously next year we've got World Cups. There's Lions tours that are going to be in Aussie not too far in the distant future. Obviously, you want to be a part of those, but how do you be a part of them? Like, how are you ranked? Who picks this? Who decides, you know, who gets those gigs? You know, like, what's the process for you to go to these pinnacle events, I suppose, is the way of saying it.
Yeah, it's similar to players, and you're right. Like, it's funny how I feel like the World Cup was just, like, 2019 was just yesterday.
It does feel like that, yeah. Massive.
Another 4 years has gone, and we're getting ready for another World Cup next year. So, you know, you're on that cycle, you're on that roller coaster of just strapping in and having to do game by game to be selected. So to go to those, as you know, like players, obviously you've got to perform really well. And every window that I mentioned before, so we have 4 windows a year. There's 12 referees in the world that I guess at that tier one test level. So you're either refereeing at that level, or, you know, you're assistant referee at that level. So it's actually probably about 17. I think they take about 12 referees to the World Cup. Then they'll have about 5 assistant referees and then 5 TMOs. So they're all selected based on performances. So coming up, so I've got, I refereed Argentina, Scotland in July. I was ranked. I was, they rated my performance, and then I was selected for a rugby championship game. So In 2 weeks, I'll referee Australia versus South Africa in Sydney at their new stadium there,
Awesome.
and I need to referee. Yeah, it's going to be pretty special.
So good.
I need to referee that game well, and if I do, I'll then be selected to referee in November. So you go window to window of needing to perform. So by the time that they come to the end of Six Nations next year, so 2023, the World Cup's going to be the end of the year. They'll make a selection.
Right.
So they'll select based on who are their top 12 referees, or the 12 referees that they want to take to the World Cup that's going to be in France at the end of the year. And like at the moment, there's not really a ranking system, but it's pretty clear that the best referees in the world right now, if you could rattle them off, Wayne Barnes, Jaco Piper, Matthew Raynow. So as an example, but they still have to keep refereeing well to be selected to go to the World Cup as well. And so we'll just find out at the end of Six Nations if we've performed well leading up to those windows. And it can really honestly come up to around you have one bad game in Six Nations, that might be you gone.
Yeah.
But the process around selection, I feel, is really thorough now. So potentially we didn't have that. It was quite subjective over the last few cycles, but now they look at the stats of our games,
Right.
They look at the reviews of our games and how we're rated. And they've got a system where that system should fall out.
Yeah.
12 to 14 referees, and then they've got to sort of pick 12 of them to go. So I'm looking forward to it. I think it puts the pressure on to perform well, to prepare well, and to referee games well. So I think when referees are refereeing it well, it's going to be good for the players.
Good luck, mate. Our
Thanks, mate.
partners at SAP pride themselves on powering the best run team. So we're asking our guest, Ben, to help identify success factors on and off the pitch, mate. Now, I wanted to take maybe a little bit of a ref skew on this. Like, during your time in rugby, is there any common success factors that stand out?
Yeah, one of the biggest one, I think, especially for referees, is always take on advice and try and seek out advice as much as you can. As a referee, there's no real book around how to referee a game well. Okay, So a lot of it comes down to experience, and you can learn that yourself. Just if I didn't ask anyone for any advice or any assistance throughout my career, you can progress, but it's going to take a long, long time. You're going to make a lot of mistakes as well on the way. Why not pick up? And for example, at this capping ceremony, it would be a great time to be able to reflect and catch up with other referees who've had similar experiences. But getting advice from people will mean that actually you can put that into your game before potentially that experience or that error has happened to you. So what it will help is actually you can referee the game better on the weekend, because you've talked to the coach after the game and given you feedback. You've talked to another referee about their positioning or the way that they communicate, or you've talked to a player or a seven around, okay, what is it that you're actually looking at when you try and come into a tackle? When you understand those things and you've been given advice from those people, and you implement into your own game, that's going to really help the performance that you can put out and your progression as well, versus just doing it by yourself. So always be an open book. You get a lot of feedback. Try and pick out the little gemstones that are inside those bits of feedback, and you'll be on your way to getting better every week.
Mate, love that. Any other sporting teams or individuals that you admire as being high-performing team, and then maybe even, again, perhaps with a skew towards referees in different sports?
Yeah, I was overseas, and I must have been over there for a November Test match, and obviously between working and preparing for a game, I went to watch Arsenal versus Tottenham at the Emirates Stadium. So a bit of a derby match.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, man, it was incredible. And one of the key things that I recognised though from that game, which I never really realised when I was watching TV, is that I was able to actually watch the referee from a wide angle just to see what they did. And what I really enjoyed, that because obviously players get stuck into the referees or the umpires in football, and one of their management tools that they used is that when they're about to yellow card a player, if there was a foul, they would quickly pull out the yellow card and hold it down beside them, and then walk over to the incident and then give the explanation and then give the yellow card. And so I was blown away by that, because I was able to recognise that players could see that immediately. Okay, the ref's going to yellow card this player. We don't need to barrage the referee and give them feedback. So I really enjoyed that, and it's something I put into my game where so normally when we give a yellow card, we time off, review, TMO, okay, this is the decision. Then we walk over to the captain, and then we pull the card out after the explanation. So we're busy explaining to the captain, and the captain might be thinking it's play on. Then we pull it out, and then they go, whoa, and then they react, and then they stop. or the opposition might come over and start saying that needs to be a yellow card as well. So what I do now is that once I've made my decision for a yellow card, I'll actually pull it out early, hold it, and as I walk over, the captain is, okay, this is a yellow card. The opposition know, okay, it is a yellow card. And then we can, it's just a better interaction. So that's one thing I thought football umpires did really well. And then I guess the competition that I really like is the NBA. And what I learned from the NBA is that what they do in their preseason is that a lot of all the new rules that they try and bring into the NBA or the new technicalities, they have a whole summer league. And that summer league, they use that for all the technical changes that they do to implement. So the referees getting used to them first and foremost, and also the players are getting used to them first and foremost as well. So they can tinker and either adjust. So by the end of the summer league, when they actually start the NBA, everyone knows the laws, the referees know how to do them correctly as well, and then it doesn't impact the game as much during that regular season. So that's something I see that they do in the NBA, which potentially I feel like we can't really do that now because we go straight into Super Rugby. There's no summer league, but potentially something we should try and look at World Rugby where we can trial these new changes and laws and competitions before they come straight into Tier 1 test matches. It's a part of the NBA which I really like what they do.
Mate, so good. Like we're almost ticked an hour, which is amazing. Time's flowing, and there's just so many things I want to chat to. We're going to have to get you back on, maybe even a couple of times. One around the capping ceremony, maybe with some other refs, and also just stuff around scrums, breakdown, cards, all the things that I'd love to get your opinion on. So what we can look out for as fans and get a better understanding of the game, because it is so dynamic and it can be so subjective. So really keen to get you back and talk about all that sort of stuff. But thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you coming on. Good luck tonight. It's a Shield game, isn't it? That you're reffing over this weekend, so there's always a bit of heat around that as well. So good luck there. Enjoy it, and yes, mate. Look forward to getting you back on again, perhaps in a month or so.
Cheers, Rownie. Thanks very much.
Cheers, mate.
The All Blacks podcast is powered by our official cloud software partner, SAP, helping our teams in black be the best run in sports. Hosted by Rob Dunne in the Hargrave Street studio. Produced by Carl Thompson from Blue and Ginge, the podcast producers. Video editing by Mac Leesburg, graphics by Western Design, content advising from Andy Burt, and commercial manager for the podcast is Valeska Hoth. Follow the All Blacks podcast on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, and anywhere you get your podcasts.